This our third meeting in this Daurah, where we read the book Sifātus-Ṣalātin-Nabī sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, min al-takbir ila al-taslim ka'annaka taraha, meaning the summary of some of the pillars of the prayer, outside the prayer and inside the prayer, things like istiqbal al-qibla, facing the direction of the Kaaba, things like standing for the purpose of prayer, and also the first takbir, which is takbiratul ihram. Then we moved further to talk about things like dua al-istiftah, and after that we talked about qira'atu al-Fatiha, meaning the recitation of Surah al-Fatiha for the Imam and for the Ma'mum, meaning for the one praying behind the Imam. So today, inshallah, we'll continue from al-qira'atu ba'd al-Fatiha, meaning the recitation after Surah al-Fatiha. After finishing the recitation of Surah al-Fatiha, وَيُسَنُّ أَن يَقْرَأَ بَعْدَ الْفَاتِحَةِ سُورَةً أُخْرَى. It is from the sunnah that he reads another surah after Surah al-Fatiha. حَتَّى فِي صَلَاةِ الْجَنَازَةِ. Even in the funeral prayer, it is from the sunnah to recite another surah after Surah al-Fatiha. أو بعض الآيات في الركعتين الأولين, or some verses, if not a whole surah, that's what he means. If not a whole surah, at least one should recite some verses في الركعتين الأولين, in the first two rak'ah of the prayer, in the first 2 units of the prayer. When after reciting Fatiha, you recite another surah, a whole surah preferably, or you can recite some verses from the surah. So here he mentioned, even if it's the funeral prayer, because of the hadith of Talha, where he mentioned that he prayed behind Abdullah ibn Abbas in Salatul Janaza, where he recited Surah al-Fatiha and another surah, and he said, لِتَعْلَوْا أَنَّهَا sunnah, that you should know. I did that so that you should know it is from the sunnah of the Prophet. So that's why some scholars said it's also from the sunnah to recite another surah after Surah al-Fatiha. And also another scholars are of the view that even if you do not recite any surah apart from Surah al-Fatiha, Salatul Janaza, that it's still valid. What is preferable in reciting another surah after Fatiha is to recite a whole surah. That's what is preferable. But if you cannot recite a whole surah, you can read some verses, at least a single verse after Surah al-Fatiha. And it's also like second choice is to start the recitation from the beginning of the surah. Even if you are not going to read the whole surah, that's what one should settle for. If you cannot recite a whole surah, but at least you should start from the beginning of the surah. If not, then you can start from anywhere, provided the meaning, like you have to be careful of the meaning where you are going to start from. That's al-ibtida. And reason, that's why the scholars say one should start from the beginning of the surah, because you will not find yourself in that conflict of is it permissible to start from here or not. وَيُطِيلُ الْقِرَاءَةَ بَعْدَهَا أَحْيَانًا, that the recitation used to be long sometimes. وَيُقَصِّرُهَا أَحْيَانًا, and other times it used to be short. So sometimes he would lengthen the recitation, and sometimes he would shorten the recitation. لِعَارِضِ السَّفَرِ, because of reasons like travel, أو سعال, or because of cough, أو مرض, or sickness, أو بكاء الصبي, or because of the crying of a child. The Prophet ﷺ would start the prayer intending to read a very long surah, and then he would hear a child crying, and that would be the reason for him to read a short surah. So it is one of the reasons that would make an imam to read short surahs. So here, what he is trying to say is that like the natural thing is to read actually long verses, long surah, except for when there is a reason to make it shorter. And one of those reasons to shorten the recitation is, for example, some of the reasons he mentioned: sickness, when you are leading people in prayer, and amongst those people, there are sick people, children, the aged, those that are in need, they are in urgent need, for example, those that need to go to answer the call of nature. So these are some of the reasons that will make you to shorten your recitation in the prayer. وتختلف القراءة باختلاف الصلوات, and the length of the recitation depends upon the prayer. فالقراءة في صلاة الفجر أطول منها في سائر الصلوات الخمس. The recitation of صلاة الفجر used to be long. It's longer than any other recitation, any other prayer. ثم الظهر, then followed by ظهر. ثم العصر, then عصر. والعشاء, then عصر and isha. المغرب غالبا, then maghrib. This is what is obtainable most of the time. But this isn't saying that always this is how the length should be arranged. Sometimes the Prophet ﷺ would recite a very long surah in Salatul Maghrib, which normally should be the one that you would recite less. So it's not a constant thing. And this is actually what the companions reported from the Sunnah of the Prophet. There is hadith of An-Nasa'i, the hadith of Sulaiman ibn Yasar, that An-Nasa'i narrated, that a man who used to pray Salatul Zuhr, who used to lengthen the recitation in Salatul Zuhr, then he used to shorten it in Salatul Asr, then he would read Qisarul Mufassal in Salatul Maghrib, and in Salatul Isha he would read the Awsat al-Mufassal, those that are moderate. So when he finished praying, Abu Huraira mentioned that I haven't seen anybody that prays like the same way the Prophet ﷺ used to pray, meaning that this is the same way, this is in prophetic tradition. That's what he said. So this terminologies of Mufassal, where we would hear them in a lot of hadith, the Prophet ﷺ used to read the Mufassal, which starts from Surah Qaf up to Surah An-Nas, and they are also divided into three: Qisar, Wasat, the Tiwal, and Tiwal al-Mufassal, meaning the Mufassal that are long, and they are the ones that are moderate, and they are the ones that are short. So the ones that are long in the Mufassal are the ones normally recited in Salatul Fajr, from Surah Qaf up to which surah? From the long Mufassal up to Surah Al-Mursalat. So the Prophet ﷺ used to recite them not often in Salatul Fajr, and from Surah Al-Naba up to the end of Surah Al-Layl, they are the moderate ones, and they are the ones that are mostly recited in which prayer? In Salatul Isha. And from Surah Al-Duha up to Surah Al-Nas, the ones that are mostly recited in Salatul Maghrib. So this is actually the arrangement. That's what he's trying to say here. وَالْقَرَاءَةُ فِي صَلَاةِ اللَّيْلِ أَطْوَلْ مِنْ ذَلِكَ كُلِّهِ. And recitation in the night prayers, the optional night prayers, used to be longer than all of this. Meaning they used to be longer than the obligatory prayers rather. Because there was a time when the Prophet ﷺ prayed the voluntary prayers in the night, where one of the companions was mentioning that he prayed together with the Prophet, and he thought that the Prophet would stop at 100 verses. Then he was like, okay, let me stay with him, I can do it. So the Prophet actually read 100 verses and he didn't do the ruku. He continued, and then he was like, okay, he would stop at 200. He started Surah Al-Baqarah, then he said, okay, he would stop at 200. And the Prophet did it. And then he said, okay, maybe he would read the whole surah in 2 rak'ah. Maybe he's going to divide it. The Prophet didn't. He finished Surah Al-Baqarah, and then he began Surah Al-Nisa. He began Surah Al-Nisa, which he finished, and then he began Surah Ali Imran, which he also finished standing. So this is to show you that the night prayers used to be longer than any other obligatory prayer. And this is actually the sunnah of the Prophet. وَالسُنَّةُ إِطَالَةُ الْقِرَاءَةِ فِي الرَّكَعَةِ الْأُولَى أَكْثَرُ مِنَ الثَّانِي. And this is also from the sunnah to make the recitation in the first rak'ah to be longer than the one in the second rak'ah. Meaning the recitation in the first rak'ah should be longer than the one in the second rak'ah, and the first and second rak'ah longer than the third and fourth rak'ah. It's also from the sunnah. It has been reported in the hadith of Abu Qatada, where he mentioned that the Prophet used to make the first rak'ah longer, the recitation of the first rak'ah longer than the one of the second rak'ah. And also in the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri that Muslim reported, where he said we used to survey always the prayer of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meaning they used to examine his prayer critically, the duration and everything. So what they found out was his prayer in the Zuhur, in the first and second rak'ah, used to be the same as the duration of reading Surah Al-Sajdah, meaning 30 verses, Surah Al-Sajdah. And in the third and fourth rak'ah, it used to be half of that. And in the recitation of the first 2 rak'ah of Salatul Asr used to be with the third and fourth rak'ah of Salatul Zuhur, meaning around 15 verses. And the prayer and the third and fourth rak'ah in Salatul Asr used to be half of that in the first and second rak'ah of Salatul Asr. Meaning, what he means is that in the first and second rak'ah of Salatul Zuhur used to be around 30 verses, then the third and fourth around 15. Then that 15 verses is the approximate of what is obtained in the first and second rak'ah of Salatul Asr, and the half of it, around 7 or 8 verses, in the third and fourth rak'ah. So this is the sunnah, making the first rak'ah longer than the second, and making the first and second longer than the third and fourth rak'ah. وَأَن يَجْعَلَ الْقِرَاءَةَ فِي الْأُخْرَيْنِ أَقْصَرَ مِنَ الْأُولَيْنِ, and to make the recitation in the second 2 rak'ah to be shorter than the first 2 rak'ah. قَدْرَ النِّصْفِ, something that is half of that recitation. That's what I mentioned. So this is about the recitation of surah or some verses after reciting Surah Al-Fatiha that we do in our prayer, especially the first and second rak'ah of each prayer. But you have to recite another surah after Surah Al-Fatiha. We're going to see that in prayers that have 3 units or 4 units, you can also read another surah after Surah Al-Fatiha, and you can stop the recitation at Surah Al-Fatiha. From Surah Al-Fatiha, you can perform your ruku. But it's also from the sunnah that sometimes you read additional, surah after Surah Al-Fatiha, even in the third and fourth rak'ah of Salatul Zuhr and also Salatul Asr. So, Qira'atul Fatiha fi kulli rak'ah, the recitation of Fatiha in every rak'ah in the prayer. So, this indicates that Surah Al-Fatiha is recited in what? In every rak'ah. If it's a prayer having 2 rak'ah, in each of the 2 you will recite Surah Al-Fatiha. 3 you will recite Surah Al-Fatiha 3 times, And a prayer with 4 rak'ah, you recite Surah Al-Fatiha 4 times. وتجب قراءة الفاتحة في كل ركعة. It is obligatory to recite Surah Al-Fatiha in each rak'ah. ويسن الزيادة عليها في الركعتين الأخيرتين أيضا أحيانا. This is what I mentioned, that it's from the sunnah to add some verses after Surah Al-Fatiha in في الركعتين الأخرين أيضا أحيانا. In the second, in the third and fourth rak'ah, sometimes you can do that. ولا تجوز إطالة الإمام للقراءة بأكثر مما جاء في السنة. It is not allowed for the Imam to recite more than that which is obtained in the Sunnah from the Prophet. For example, to come in Salatul Fajr and you read Surah Al-Baqarah, the whole of it. This is contrary to the Sunnah of the Prophet. Because the Sunnah of the Prophet is to read Tiwal al-Mufassal, some chapters of the Quran like Qaf, Zariyat, and sometimes based on the needs of the people. You can even read إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا. Khalas, that's it. So it's actually not allowed for the Imam to make unnecessarily, contrary to the Sunnah of the Prophet, make the prayer very actually elongated. That's what he's trying to say. Some surahs in the Quran are for voluntary prayers. If you want to pray in the night, you can pray. Or you want to pray alone, you can read them. But you do not pray leading the people with them. Okay? Because of the hadith of the Prophet, where he mentioned that إِذَا أَمَّا أَحَدُكُمُ النَّاسَ فَلْيُخَفِّفْ. Whoever leads people in the prayer, he should make it easy on them. فَإِنَّ فِيهِمُ الصَّغِيرَ وَالْكَبِيرَ. And from amongst them are the young, the aged, those that are sick, and also those that have needs to attend to. وَإِذَا صَلَّى وَحْدَهُ فَلْيُصَلِّ كَيْفَ شَاءَ. But when he prays alone, he can pray. You can elongate the prayer. You can pray with 9 surah if you like, or you can read the whole of the Quran if you can. Yes, it's possible for you to read it. So you can, if you want to do it, you can read the whole of the Quran, which will take you an approximately of like 10 hours. I think. So you can, if you start immediately after Isha prayer, you may reach up to like only 30 minutes before Fajr, before you finish the whole Quran. But it's something that one should try. If you can do it, something that you should try at least once in your life. Yes, that you have read the whole Quran in the night prayer. Now, ولا تجوز إطالة الإمام للقراءة بأكثر ما جاء في السنة فإنه يشق بذلك على من قد يكون وراءه من رجل كبير في السن. That's what I mentioned. Because of people that are aged أو مريض or sick أو امرأة لها رضيع, or a mother that has a child, a nursing mother, أو ذي الحاجة, or those that have needs to attend to. Now, الجهر والإصرار بالقراءة, meaning reading out loud or quietly, because there are places, or there are some units, or there are some prayers where you read out loud, and there are some prayers where you read out silently, quietly. And in a single prayer, there are some units of the prayer where you read out loud, and there are some units of the prayer where you read out quietly. For example, in Salatul Maghrib, the 2 units of the prayer you read out loud, and the last one you read quietly. But in prayers like Salatul Fajr, the whole of it you read out loud. And prayers like Salatul Zuhr, the whole of it you read quietly. So this is what he's trying to say here. وَيَجْهَرُ بِالْقِرَاءَةِ فِي صَلَاةِ الصُّبْحِ, that he's going to read out loud in Salatul Subhi, wal-Jum'ah, wal-Eidain, and the 2 Eid prayers, wal-Istisqa, and the prayer for seeking rain, wal-Kusuf, and also the prayer for eclipse, وَالْأُولَيْنِ مِنْ صَلَاةِ الْمَغْرِبِ وَالْإِشَاءِ, and the 2 units of prayer in Salatul Maghrib and Isha. That's what I mentioned. وَيَسِرُّ بِهَا فِي صَلَاةِ الظُّهْرِ وَالْعَصْرِ, and he will make the recitation quietly in Salatul Zuhr wal Asr, وفي الثالثة من صلاة المغرب, and in the rak'ah in Salatul Maghrib, والأخرين من صلاة العشاء, and the third and fourth rak'ah in Salatul Isha. This is something that we all know. The prayers that you pray out loud, that you recite out loud, and the prayers that you recite quietly. ويجوز للإمام أن يسمعهم الآية أحيانا. It is allowed for the Imam to read out loud enough for people to hear sometimes, في الصلاة السرية, in the quiet prayers. For example, in Salatul Zuhr, then it is allowed for the Imam. Salatul Zuhr, you pray quietly, but it's allowed in a single verse, 1 or 2, to read out loud enough for the people that are immediately behind you to hear. It's not prohibited. Okay? And this doesn't mean that the Imam can read like 3, 4, 5 verses loud, because there will not be any distinction between that prayer being Sirriya and another prayer being Jahriya. And also, this is from the Sunnah of the Prophet. He used to do that. Abu Qatada mentioned in that hadith where he said, "Wasmi on an ayat," and he would read out loud enough for us to hear sometimes. In Salatul Zuhr, he was talking about Salatul Zuhr and Salatul Asr. Wa amma al-witru wa Salatul Layl. As for witr and Salatul Layl, the night prayers, witr, they are the prayers you do last at night. Those odd number of rak'ah that you pray, either 1 or 3 or even 5, you can pray. Because the Prophet ﷺ also prayed witr with 1, he prayed with 3, also prayed with 5. The hadith of Aisha, radiallahu anha. So those are the witr. As for them, on Salatul Layl, فَيَسِرُّ فِيهَا تَارَةً وَيَجْهَرُ تَارَةً. He can read out loud sometimes, and other times he can choose to read quietly. So you can stand up in the night to pray quietly, and you can decide to pray out loud. وَيَتَوَسَّطُ فِي رَفْعِ الصَّوْتِ. He should be moderate in raising his voice. Meaning in the night, when you want to pray out loud, you should be moderate in raising your voice. Not that you will raise your voice so that the whole house and the neighbors will know that you are praying. No, just moderate enough to qualify as Jahriya. So the next thing is Tartilul Qira'ah, mean reading the Quran in beautiful manner. Just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. So this is an obligation that whenever you are going to read the Quran, you should read it with tartil. There's no other way around this. You must read the Quran with tartil. That is the thing. But as we know, even there are different stages of reading in tartil, right? We know that there is tartil that is called tahqiq, there is tartil that is called tajweed, and there is tartil that is called hajr. All of them are tartil, but at different levels. Even the one that is doing hajr is being mindful of all the rules of tajweed and applying them, but he's reading faster, and the one that is reading with tajweed. Even though some of the scholars of tajweed do mention tartil as a level of that, but actually what is right, what is correct is that tartil is not under this classification. In fact, all of them are classification of tartil. So there is no way you go and this tahqiq tartil, then tajweed and hadr. This is, by the way, what I'm trying to say is that reading the Quran with tartil is an obligation. because of the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, we just mentioned وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. وَالسُنَّةُ أَن يُرَتِّلَ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. It is from the sunnah that he recites the Quran tartil in a good manner. لَا هَذْلًا وَلَا عَجَلًا. Not reading it, with haste. وَلَا عَجَلًا too, hurriedly, quickly. So because this is in opposition with tartil, because tartil means reading the Quran slowly, calmly, you read it calmly. So whenever you read it very fast, that some letters of the Quran are not distinguishable from one another, it's not tartil. So you have to read slowly, calmly, following all the rules of tajweed, right? And also reflecting upon the meaning of the Quran. Okay? And also with the right pronunciation of the letters. So this is what tartil means. So it doesn't matter whether you're going to pray obligatory prayer or voluntary prayers where you have a target. You want to read 5 hizb, and then people will come and be reading. No, that's not from the Sunnah of the Prophet. That's not from the Sunnah of the Prophet. Whatever your target, even if you want to read in that prayer, you want to read hizb, that's 3 juz, you have to read it tartilan. It depends, you can read with hadr, still being mindful of the rules of tajweed. You have to read it with tartil, okay? Not because you want to read the whole Quran in Taraweeh, then you'll be carefree from all rules of tajweed. بل قراءة مفسرة حرفا حرفا. You have to read in a way that every harf is distinguishable from another harf. ويزين القرآن بصوته, and he should beautify the Quran with his voice. Meaning the voice I'm using now like this to talk shouldn't be the voice I'll use to read the Quran. Now like this I can talk anyhow, but when I want to read the Quran, I should beautify my voice. That's what it means. The Prophet ﷺ said, زَيِّنُوا الْقُرْآنَ بِأَصْوَاتِكُمْ. That you should beautify your recitation of the Quran. So that if someone hears the Quran, he falls in love with the Quran, not with you. Okay? Yes. So that he falls in love with the Quran, so that you make other people fall in love with the Quran, not with you. You are not the target. وَيَتَغَنَّى بِهِ فِي حُدُودِ الْأَحْكَامِ الْمَعْرُوفَةِ. And he reads the Quran with all the rules of tajweed in a melodic way. عند أهل العلم بالتجويد, with all the rules of tajweed that is with, or that is applied from the scholars of tajweed. Okay? ولا يتغنى به على الألحان المبتدعة. He shouldn't recite the Quran based on new, innovated tones. ولا على القوانين الموسيقية, or based on musical notes. The Quran is not a music. Meaning you should beautify your recitation of the Quran, but you shouldn't recite it like a music. The way you sing a music, it shouldn't be the same way you read the Quran. But beautification of the voice is something that is required while reciting the Quran, because of a lot of hadith that we see, where we will be able to infer that even this hadith that I mentioned, Zaynul Quran is an indication that beautifying the voice is something that is required when reciting the Quran. And also that hadith of the Prophet heard Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, right? Abu Musa al-Ash'ari was reciting, and the Prophet went to him and he told him that, wow, this recitation was very beautiful, and he said that had I known you were listening to me, لَحَبَّرْتُهُ لَكَ تَحْبِيرًا, and I would have even beautified it more for you. So it's something that is required, okay? But at the same time, it shouldn't be the same way that I will sing a song where I will elongate one word like that for the duration of 20 seconds without anything. No, it doesn't apply to the Quran. That's against the rule of tajweed, where everything is measured. And that's what everything is measured. If you're going to elongate something, okay, this place is 4 for the duration of 4. For example, you can say second, or for 6, or for 2, for example. That's the duration. It's a measure of duration, right? Or if you're going to do some gunna, which is nasalization, which it also has a duration. So you have to be careful of all these rulings of tajweed. You shouldn't read the Quran the way you read, the way you will sing a song. Because if I want to sing a song, I want it to be pleasing to the one that is listening to me, even if it doesn't follow any rule. So I can come here and elongate my voice. So that's what is actually prohibited when you are reciting the Quran. Okay. And unfortunately, we live in an era where this is seen, rampantly. This kind of recitation of the Quran is seen rampantly. People just recite the Quran. Yeah, when you hear the voice, very sweet, but you know that a lot of things are wrong in that recitation. Now, yeah, I made an example. For example, when you want to do the mud, doing the mud like 10 or 12, something like that. You should be the judge. When you hear someone reciting and you hear him elongating a mud 12, you know, oh, this is it. I'm not going to call any name. That's what you want. You should be the judge. Al-Fathu al-Imam. Correcting the Imam. Correcting the Imam. ويشرع للمقتدي أن يتقصد الفتح على الإمام إذا ارتج عليه في القراءة. That the one praying behind the Imam should correct the Imam when his recitation becomes, mixed up. When his recitation becomes mixed up, you should actually correct the Imam. So this is part of what is required of the Ma'mum. There was a time when the Prophet was praying, and you know what happened? He became, the recitation became mixed up for him, the Prophet, whom the Quran was to. But the Quran, the recitation became mixed up for him. So you see, once you know this, you'll be at peace. Seriously, you'll not be bothered by some things. Okay, I have memorized the Quran for over 20 years. Me, I'm going in. So if I enter front, I don't want anybody to correct you. If you do a mistake, definitely we are going to correct you. So that's it. Because the Prophet ﷺ, when he became bewildered with the recitation, and nobody corrected him until after the prayer, and he was like, what happened? Where's Ubay ibn Ka'b? Where's Ubay ibn Ka'b? Are you not? He said, why didn't you correct me? We thought the word has been. Yeah. So, nobody dared to correct him. Nobody dared to correct him. So he was like, you should have corrected me. So that's it. Yeah, he thought the verse was normal. The verse was normal. So that's it. That's why he mentioned here that the Ma'mum should correct his Imam. Even in the sacred mosque, there is someone whose sole job is correcting the Imam in the Haram. That's his job. So whenever, even if other Imams would correct the Imam, it's not their job. It's not their job. So whenever you see today's correction and Imam, that's not his job. There is someone that most of the time used to be there, but not always. His job is to correcting the Imam. And Hajjaj, I forgot the name. He retired last year? Okay. Now, Ar-Ruku'. And this is what should be done even in our mosques. There should be someone whose job is correcting the Imam. Not everybody from here, just because I memorize that place, just because you are reading from Amma to Nas, and I know that place very well. So, I'll just be waiting for you to make one mistake so that I'll correct you. It shouldn't be that way. Okay? I'll just be waiting. Okay, this Imam, okay, is he going to say Kalla inna tadhkira or Kalla inna tadhkira, so that I'll hold his neck? So it shouldn't be that way. There should be someone who should be correcting the Imam. Okay? Now, the next thing we are going to talk about is Ar-Ruku'. We are done with recitation. Reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, the surah after that. Then what comes after the recitation is Ar-Ruku'. فَإِذَا فَرَغَ مِنَ الْقِرَاءَةِ. Once he is done with recitation, سَكَتَ سَكْتَةً لَطِيفَةً. He should pause for a while, momentarily, بِمِقْدَارِ مَا يَتَرَادُ إِلَيْهِ نَفَسُ. Just enough for his breathing to return back to normal. Once you finish an ayah, Kafirin, Allahu Akbar, not like that. Okay, Kafirin, for example, wait a little bit, then you say Allahu Akbar. Okay, and this is also part of the sunnah of the Prophet. And the Nabi sallallahu kanat lahu saktatani. The Prophet used to pause twice in his prayer. The first pause is when reciting Dua al-Istiftah, and they would hear him. Okay, after the takbir, we'll pause for a little bit before starting the recitation. That's when he used to recite the Dua al-Istiftah. And the second one is before going for ruku. This sector we are talking about, this little pause before the ruku. ثم يرفع يديه على الوجوه المتقدمة في تكبيرة الإحرام. Then he raises his hand the same way we mentioned before for the takbiratul ihram, where you can raise your hand to the level of the shoulder or sometimes up to the level of the ears, right? Based on the hadith of Ibn Umar, where he mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ يرفع يديه حذو منكبيه to the level of the shoulders. And also the hadith of Abu Humayd al-Sa'idi, who mentioned right Nabi sallallahu إذا كبر جعل يديه حذاء منكبيه, also to the level of the shoulders. Okay, and also the hadith of Abu Humayd from Abu Dawud, where he mentioned that the Prophet used to he mentioned in that particular narration, he mentioned that he used to raise the hand, then he would do the takbir. We also mentioned this. And also in the hadith of Malik ibn al-Huwayrith from Muslim, where he mentioned that the Prophet used to raise his hand up to the level of the ear. Yes. So you see, you can do it anyhow, meaning anyhow within this range that we mentioned. Okay. When going for ruku, so after takbiratul ihram is one of the instances where you will raise your hand. So this is the second instance. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يرفع يديه حذو منكبيه إذا افتتح الصلاة وإذا كبر للركوع. This is the ruku. وإذا رفع رأسه من الركوع. These are the three primary instances where you raise your hands. When you do takbiratul ihram, when you are going to go for ruku, and when you raise from the ruku. These are the three primary places where you should raise your hand while praying. But we are going to see later that it's also permissible to raise your hands, for example, after raising from the sujood when you are going to sit and other places like that. But these three places are the primary instances where you raise your hands. So, وَيُكَبِّرْ, then he says the takbir, Allahu Akbar, wa huwa wajib. And this is obligatory, right? ثُمَّ يَرْكَعْ, then he performs the ruku, then he bows. بقدر ما تستقر مفاصله, so that each of his joints become at rest, and they should become at rest. ويأخذ كل عضو مأخذه, and so that each part of the body should take its place, should return to its normal place. And this is actually showing us, it's pointing towards the fact that ruku is not something that, number one, it's not something that you do anyhow. So there is a way that you do the ruku, and two, it's not something that you go for ruku and then raise from the ruku within a blink of an eye. So you have to wait until all joints are relaxed. That's what it means, until all joints are relaxed. And this is how the Prophet ﷺ used to pray. That's why this book, the book's name is befitting of what is in the book. He actually described how the Prophet used to pray. When he performs a ruku, he would wait until every joint relaxed. Not that I will go for ruku and then come back immediately, that one joint will just dislocate. Because I'm in a hurry, I'm in a rush, before it settles, I'll draw it. So, وَهَذَا رُكْنٌ, and this is a pillar. This is a pillar in the prayer. Meaning this whole act of ruku, is a pillar. Okay? كيفية الركوع, how the ruku is done. Now, وَيَضَعُ يَدَيْهِ عَلَى رُكْبَتَيْهِ, he should place his hands on his knees. وَيُمَكِّنُهُمَا مِنْ رُكْبَتَيْهِ, he should support them on the knees, meaning he should hold the knee very well, just mere placing on the knees. So you are going to hold it like you are grasping it, so that you support yourself. وَيُفَرِّجُ بَيْنَ أَصَابِعِهِ, and he should actually give space between his fingers. So ruku is not done like this. It's not like this. It's something like this. Okay? Now we'll have a volunteer so that you'll be demonstrating. Maybe you can take your. Because the demonstrations will be coming. You should just sit here so that each demonstration, and I hope that everyone can see. Yes, how you will open, yes, like this. So this is how the ruku is done, how you place. Okay, so now you shouldn't mind about other things. Like our main concern is the hands, okay, not other things. We are going to come back to it. So here, like this, you should hold some place, and you have to hold it like this. Okay, so one of the common mistakes is actually joining your fingers like this. Do it the wrong way. So this is the wrong way. Do it like this. This is for sujood. We are going to come to that. But for ruku, you have to space your fingers out and you grasp the knees. Okay. So this is about this. كأنه قابض على ركبتيه, as if you are grasping. Yes, thank you. As if you are grasping the knees. وهذا كله واجب. All of this is wajib. Doing this is wajib. ويمد ظهره ويبسطه حتى لو صب عليه الماء لاستقر. And he should stretch out his back so it becomes flat. So that even if water were to be poured on his back, it would remain. Okay, it wouldn't trickle down. وهو واجب, and this is obligation. This is wajib. So we are done with the hands, how you grasp the knees. Then the back should be flat. Okay. ولا يخفض رأسه. Okay. It should be flat. ولا يخفض رأسه. He shouldn't bend his head. Okay, he's not bending his head. ولا يرفعه. He shouldn't raise the head, so he's not raising his head. So do it the wrong way. Now lower your head the way that is wrong, like this. like this. Yes. Now you can raise it up. Yes. You see, all these ways are wrong. You should keep it in between. That's what it means. You shouldn't lower the head and you shouldn't raise the head. And I saw this recently actually. One guy was praying and he was like this. He was looking straight. So this is how it's done. Okay? Because the hadith of Aisha anha, that Muslim narrated, which كان صلى الله عليه وسلم يستفتح الصلاة بالتكبير والقراءة بالحمد لله رب العالمين وكان إذا ركع لم يشخص رأسه ولم يصوبه ولكن بين ذلك. That if he performs the ruku, the bowing, he doesn't actually lower his head or bring it up, but in between that. That's what he mentioned here. Because of the hadith. She was describing the prayer of the Prophet ﷺ, how he used to pray. So this is how the Prophet used to pray. Okay? ولكن يجعله متساويا لظهره. He maintains it at the same level with his back, the head. ويباعد مرفقيه عن جنبيه. Then he distances his elbows from his sides. He shouldn't do the ruku like this. You should keep a distance. The elbows should be away from your body, okay, away from your sides. That's what it means. We are going to demonstrate even this. Maybe next time when he comes, we'll do a lot of demonstrations of it. Okay? ويقول في ركوعه, and he should say in his ruku, سبحان ربي العظيم ثلاث مرات أو أكثر. He should say سبحان ربي العظيم 3 times or more. 3 times or more. سبحان ربي العظيم. سبحان ربي العظيم. سبحان ربي العظيم. Okay? So this is it. You can say other adhkar that came from the Prophet ﷺ, which also done in the ruku. You can say Subhan Rabbi al-Azim wa bihamdi. You can say Subhan Rabbi al-Azim wa bihamdi. And what else can you say? Yes. Then what else? What else? Subhanaka Allahumma Rabbana bihamdik. Allahumma ighfir. This is my favorite. Subhanaka Allahumma Rabbana bihamdik. Allahumma ighfir. The way Aisha narrated, Aisha told us that the Prophet ﷺ used to say in his ruku' and his sujood, Subhanaka Allahumma Rabbana bihamdik. Allahumma ighfir. So it's an adhkar that you can say in your ruku' and also you can say in your sujood. And also Allahumma laka raka'tu. And raka'tu, the one said in sujood, Allahumma laka sajadtu. So there are a lot of adhkar that you can do in the ruku'. Okay? So you can say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. Then the next thing is Taswiyatul Arkan, meaning the different pillars in the prayer, making them equal. Okay, they should become of equal duration. Your ruku, the duration of your ruku should be equal or somewhat similar to the duration of your sujood. Okay? The duration of your standing after ruku, a little bit less than the duration of your ruku. So this is what it means by taswiyah, for them to become equal. For example, if your ruku takes an approximate of 20 seconds, for example, your sujood should also take that, plus or minus 3 seconds, for example. It doesn't have to be exact because you are not timing yourself in the prayer. No, it should be somewhat similar, the duration of your ruku and that of your sujood and everything in your prayer, everything. Okay, so from here, that's where a question will raise: why is it from the sunnah to make the last sujood unnecessarily longer than other sujood, or what? Why is it that the last sujood used to be longer than any other sujood? It's not from the teaching of the Prophet. It's not from the sunnah of the Prophet. all the pillars of the prayer used to be approximately equal duration. ومن السنة أي يسوي بين الأركان في الطول. It is from the sunnah that he makes the different arkan, the different pillars of similar duration. ويجعل ركوعه وقيامه بعد الركوع وسجوده وجلسته بين السجدتين قريبا من السواء. And he should make all these things we've mentioned almost equal. Okay? ولا يجوز أن يقرأ القرآن في الركوع ولا في السجود. It is not allowed for him to recite the Quran in his ruku', in his bowing or prostration, in his ruku' or sujud. You should not recite the Quran during that time. This prohibition came from the Prophet, where he said in the hadith of Ibn Abbas, ألا وإني نهيت أن أقرأ القرآن راكعا أو ساجدا. That I've been prohibited to, it has been prohibited to me to read the Quran راكعا أو ساجدا, in bowing or prostration. فأما الركوع فعظموا فيه الرب. In ruku' you should glorify your Lord. وأما السجود فاجتهدوا في الدعاء. But in prostration you should do your dua. You should become earnest in doing your dua. فَقَمِنٌ أَن يُسْتَجَابَ لَهُ. It is more fitting that it will be actually accepted that time in the sujood. So there is no recitation of the Quran, the ruku, and sujood. Okay? Well, that you go for sujood and then you want to read the page that you want to read after in the second raka'ah. You go for sujood in the first raka'ah. You know, there's second raka'ah, and you want to read one page. So, okay, let me try and read it. Okay, I'm good to go. No, it's not allowed to read the Quran. The Quran, you know, everything in the prayer has its place. When you recite the Quran before going for ruku, that's the place where you recite the Quran. Any other place apart from that, you don't recite the Quran. Okay, you don't recite the Quran. الاعتدال من الركوع, standing, meaning standing erect from ruku'. ثم يرفع صلبه من الركوع وهذا ركوع. Then he should raise a stand from the ruku', and this is a pillar. Standing after ruku' is a pillar in the prayer. The same way the ruku' itself, it's a pillar. And all these things we are mentioning, that this is a pillar, this is a pillar, that the ruku' is a pillar. What does it mean? If you miss it, it means something. That's what we are saying, that this is a pillar. If you miss it, it means something. Will it suffice for you to do the sound, the prostration of forgetfulness because you miss a rukun? No, it doesn't suffice. It doesn't suffice. If you miss a rukun, for example, now this prostration or standing after ruku or the ruku itself, you miss it. So how are you going to correct that? It has an implication, saying this is rukun, this is mustahab, this is so in prayer. Okay, because there are certain things, certain group of things that you can correct by doing sujood sahu, and there are certain things that doing sujood sahu alone will not correct. Okay. ويقول في أثناء الاعتدال, and he should say while raising up from ruku, سمع الله لمن حمده. You should say this, سمع الله لمن حمده. حمده وهذا واجب. This is wajib. You see, it has an implication saying this is wajib. It's not a rukun. It doesn't have the same ruling if you miss it. If you miss saying سمع الله لمن حمده, it doesn't have the same ruling as if you miss a ruku. Because that's a rukun and this is wajib. So saying سمع الله لمن حمده وهذا واجب. And trust me, most of us miss saying Allah liman hamida. ويرفع يديه عند الاعتدال على وجوه المتقدمة, and he should raise his hands while raising from ruku, the way we described earlier. ثم يقوم معتدلا مطمئنا, and then when he stands erect and in repose, meaning he has rested. That's what it means. To become rested in that standing. حتى يأخذ كل عظم مأخذه, until each of the bones takes its normal place. وهذا ركن, and this is a rukn. The way it came in the hadith, حتى يعود كل فقار مكانه, until each vertebrae returns to its place. Faqar means vertebrae. The singular is faqara. Faqara. If you want to make it a plural, you remove the ta at the end, it becomes a plural. It's faqara. So it means the vertebrae, that you should stand erect after the ruku. Not that, okay, I'm standing from the ruku, okay, I'm midway, okay, I'll stop. Then go for sujood. No, to stand erect. That's what it means. Your normal posture. Because there are some people that are in a hurry to go for sujood, that they will not stand erect after their ruku. Okay, this is what he's trying to say. وهذا ركن, and this is ركن. ويقول في هذا القيام, and then he says while standing, ربنا ولك الحمد. This is what he's going to say. ربنا ولك الحمد. وهذا واجب. And this is obligatory على كل مصل ولو كان متما. And this is obligatory on each and everyone, even if that person is behind an imam. فإنه ورد القيام, because it is the wird, it is the dhikr you say while standing. أما التسميع فورد الاعتدال, but tasmi' that you do, سمع الله لمن حمده, is the dhikr you say while standing. In the process, while you are still raising from ruku, that's when you say it. But once you are fully standing erect, there's also another thing you say. So while in the process of raising your head from the ruku, that's when you say سمع الله لمن حمده. And when you are standing erect, you say ربنا ولك الحمد, for the imam and for the ma'mum. So how many of us, the ma'mum, say سمع الله لمن حمده? Once the imam says سمع الله لمن حمده, we just say ربنا ولك الحمد. We don't care to say, we don't bother to say سمع الله لمن حمده. And it's on both the imam, now, bother not to say ربنا ولك الحمد. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Mushkila. Then I don't know what this imam doesn't know how to pray. This imam doesn't know how to pray. For him to just say Sami Allah liman hamida, and that's what. Because the thing, even where the debate is, it's not regarding the imam. It's regarding the one praying behind the imam. That's where the debate is. But for the imam, he has to say Sami Allah liman hamida and Rabbana wa lakal hamd. There's no any other view apart from this. But for the ma'mum, that's where the scholars debated. Okay, some say, okay, fine, the ma'mum should say Rabbana wa lakal hamd, and that's all. Some say that no, he has to say Sami Allah liman hamida and Rabbana, Sami Allah liman hamida while raising up from ruku. And when he is standing, he should say Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Some say no need for him to say Sami Allah liman hamida. He should just say Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Yes, because of how they interpreted the hadith. So what's your view, please? Now, saying the quote. No, for everything you say, you have to. We know the hadith, right? We know the hadith. We want to know, okay, what's your reasoning of the hadith? Why you said it? Because that's the thing. The reasoning is what we are after now. What's your reasoning? Why you say that hadith says indicates that you should say both? إنما جعل الإمام ليؤتم. Okay, that's your reason. But the hadith says, وَإِذَا قَالَ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ لِمَنْ حَمِدَهُ فَقُولُوا رَبَّنَا وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ. That when the Imam says, سَمِعَ اللَّهُ لِمَنْ حَمِدَهُ, you should say رَبَّنَا وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ. So that hadith is against you. That you should say رَبَّنَا وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ. Okay. أيوة. Okay, do you care to elaborate more so that all of us will be on the same?
Some scholars, because that's the intention of Imam, focusing the Imam on the say by doing this in action, not by this.
Yes. Okay, in his actions.
According to his action.
So what about the speech part? What are you going to say as Imam?
Since it was narrated that even he says, that one, there is a command from the Prophet. When he says this, you say this. But in any other part, you follow Imam body action, not his.
Okay. So overall, you are saying that you should say رَبَّنَا وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ alone.
No, I have the bigger point.
You can say it. You can say like سَمِعَ اللَّهُ لِمَنْ حَمِدَهُ رَبَّنَا وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ. Okay. You mean anyone you do is correct. Wallah, it's Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Also, these are part of the all reasons they have been given, and it's a debate. Up to today, each reason I look at from the two parties, I'll be convinced seriously. I say, okay, yeah, they are saying they have reasons, seriously speaking. And then once I look at this, I'll say, they are also saying, but there is one that I'm actually more inclined towards. Yeah. I think we should stick to what's before us. What's before us? Yeah, exactly. The one that is before us. Saying Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Saying the both. While you are raising from Ruku, Sami Allahu liman hamida. While you are erect, Rabbana wa lakal hamd. O Rabbana wa lakal hamd, yes. O Rabbana wa lakal hamd, O Rabbana wa lakal hamd, O Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd, O Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd. But which one is the best? The one that has more harf, more huruf, more words, definitely. What is the dhikr? Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Definitely is one, they say we say Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Because of the more, words of dhikr. Now? What? No. And so about this, he mentioned ويسوي بين هذا القيام والركوع في الطول كما تقدم, and you should make it of equal length between this standing and his ruku of approximately equal duration, like we mentioned. Meaning your ruku took you about 15 seconds, then your standing should also take approximately something like that. Not that your ruku will take 15 seconds, then you stand it 5 seconds, you are done. So this is not how the Prophet used to pray. Okay? Then what next after the ruku? Now, after the ruku and standing and the dhikr, the sujood, right? Prostration. And he said as-sujud. ثم يقول الله أكبر وجوبا. And then he should say Allahu Akbar, and this is obligatory. ويرفع يديه أحيانا. You can raise your hands sometimes if you feel like this. I say, you see, this is why he mentioned أحيانا, like sometimes, because I told you that the 3 primary instances, places where you raise your hands, takbiratul ihram, when you are going for ruku, and when rising from ruku. These are the 3. But the rest, if you wish. Okay? Yes. It's also, the Prophet also performed it. Okay? He also raised his hands. The narration I can remember was the one he did after the sujood, but he was rising from the sujood to sit. Now, how do we have some time? 20 minutes, okay. Al-Khurur ala al-Yadayn, meaning performing the sujood while supporting yourself on the hand, meaning performing the sujood while your hands touching the ground first before your knees. That's what it means, before your knees. ثم يخر إلى السجود على يديه. He should go for the sujood. He should perform the sujood on his hands, meaning the hands should touch the ground first. يضعهما قبل ركبتيه. He should place them on the ground before his knees. Okay. بهذا أمر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This is what the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم commanded. وهو الثابت عنه من فعله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And this is what is established from his actions, that he used to pray this way. His hands would touch the ground before his knees, and this is from his command. وَنَهَى عَنِ التَّشَبُّهِ بِبُرُوكِ الْبَعِيرِ, and he forbade that we actually kneel the same way as the camels kneel. وَهُوَ إِنَّمَا يَخِرُّ عَلَى رُكْبَتَيْهِ, because the camel actually kneels on his knees. اللَّتَيْنِ هُمَا فِي مُقَدِّمَتَيْهِ, the knees that are present in his forelegs. You know, the knees of the camel are present in the forelegs. Okay, so the Prophet said we shouldn't actually kneel the same way as the camel. So what does it mean? We shouldn't kneel with our four limbs, or we shouldn't kneel with our knees. So in the hadith we see that what was prohibited was kneeling on the knees, because of the hadith of Abu Hurairah, where the Prophet mentioned, إِذَا سَجَدَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَضَعْ يَدَيْهِ, and this is all that you need, this aspect. فَلْيَضَعْ يَدَيْهِ قَبْلَ رُكْبَتَيْهِ, he should place his hands before the knees. مفهوم؟ ولا يسجد أو ولا يبرك كما يبرك البعير. He shouldn't kneel the same way the camel kneels. Yes, of course, we are going to demonstrate. Okay. That is what the Prophet said. Okay. Yes, in that same hadith where Aisha was still describing the prayer of the Prophet, and also the hadith of Abu Humayd that I described. وَإِذَا سَجَدَ وَضَعَ يَدَيْهِ غَيْرَ مُفْتَرِشٍ وَلَا قَابِضِهِمَا, that when he performs the sujood, وَضَعَ يَدَيْهِ غَيْرَ مُفْتَرِشٍ, he puts his hand غَيْرَ مُفْتَرِشٍ, they are not flat on the ground, وَلَا قَابِضِهِمَا, and they are not, stick to his body, meaning they have to be above the ground and away from the body. That's what it means. غَيْرَ مُفْتَرِشٍ وَلَا قَابِضِهِمَا. ويرفع ذراعيه عن الأرض وجوبا ولا يبسطهما بسط الكلب ويمكن أنفه وجبهته من الأرض, and he should place firmly his nose and his forehead on the ground. So these two places are actually considered as one. They are considered as one. The forehead and the nose. They should touch the ground firmly. وهذا ركن, and this is a pillar. وَيُمَكِّنُ أَيْضًا رُكْبَتَيْهِ, and he should also place firmly on the ground his knees. وَكَذَا أَطْرَافُ الْقَدَمَيْنِ, and the same applies to the toes. وَيُنْصِبُهُمَا, and he should actually put them straight on the ground like this. وَهَذَا كُلُّهُ وَاجِبٌ, and all of this is obligatory. وَيَسْتَقْبِلُ بِأَطْرَافِ أَصَابِعِهِمَ الْقِبْلَةِ, and he should face with them the direction of the Qibla, meaning the toes, they should be facing the direction of the Qibla. وَيَرُصُّ عَقِبَيْهِ, and he should put together his heels. He should put them together. So this is actually describing how a person should be in sujood. Once you are established in sujood, okay. What about the hands? They should be together at the level between your shoulders and fine. That's what about the nose and the forehead? They should firmly be on the ground, right? The same with the hands, the knees, and also the toes. Okay. Where the Prophet,
the toes, are they all over the arms?
The way the Prophet mentioned,
are facing Qibla.
Yes, I'm coming. The way the Prophet mentioned in the hadith of Ibn Abbas, which was narrated by Bukhari and Muslim, that umirtu an asjuda ala sab'ati a'zum, that I was commanded to perform my sujood on 7 parts or bones, 7 parts of the body. Ala al-jabha, he said, upon the forehead, and then he pointed to the nose. Said upon the forehead, he pointed to the nose. This showing you that the forehead and the nose, they are the same thing. Then that the forehead and the nose have to be on the ground. That's what it means. So that's 1. He said 7, right? So that's 1. Waliyadain, and the 2 hands, that's 3. Warukbatain, and the 2 knees, that's 5. And the toes, that's from the 2 right and left, that's 7. So there are 7 parts that whenever you are in sujood, they have to be on the ground. They have to be on the ground. So you shouldn't come praying, performing sujood, and because maybe you don't want your whites to become stained, then you perform the sujood in a funny way, that you are not on these 7 bodily parts, then you are on your own, right? This is not what the Prophet ﷺ commanded. So there's it. Then the toes should be facing the Qibla, the same way the fingers too are facing the Qibla. So this is showing you that you do not come and put your toes like this, like you are tiptoeing. No, you don't perform that. You have to bend them in a way that they should face. They should face what? They should face the Qibla. Yes. Yes, to demonstrate.
Okay, sujud and what?
You see? Hey, you should keep it, it should be on the ground. Right? It should be on the ground. All of it, except if you can't do it. Yes. It's fine, yes. Fine. Okay, yes, perform that. It shouldn't be, okay, it should be like this, right? Yes. Yes, it shouldn't be that way. ولا يبسطهما بسط الكلب. You shouldn't allow them lie on the ground. The waists are not spaced apart and they are facing the Qibla. Also, the toes are facing the Qibla. Okay, and he is, I don't know for the nose and the forehead, but from what I can see 6 parts on the ground, right? Okay, that's it. Thank you. Forehead should be on the ground. Okay? Thank you. And also the heels being together, right? You shouldn't, and this is one of the common mistakes we see every day. You see a person performing the sujood and the legs are spaced like this. They should be together. Really bad. So it's a mistake. And that's why we remind ourselves of these things, right? We are reminding ourselves of these things so that we should correct them. And the next thing is al-i'tidal fi sujud. ويجب عليه أن يعتدل في سجوده. It is obligatory that sujud, or he actually established sujud, settled in his sujud. وذلك بأن يعتمد فيه اعتمادا متساويا على جميع أعضاء سجوده. And that is achieved by supporting himself on all these 7 parts of sujud that we mentioned. We're here? Okay. Once I reach this, then we start. We're here, and they are al-jabha wal-anf ma'an, meaning the forehead and the nose together as one, wal-kaffani, and the 2 hands, wal-rukbatani, and the knees, wa atraf al-qadamayn, and the toes. وَمَنْ اعْتَدَلَ فِي سُجُودِهِ هَكَذَا, and never establishes his sujud like this, فَقَدْ اطْمَأَنَّ يَقِينًا, then he has indeed achieved or attained itmi'nan, that is required in prayer. What? Yeah, itmi'nan, tranquility, that is required in the prayer. The one the Prophet commanded Murshidut-Ṭullāb to repeat his salah, and he mentioned حَتَّى تَطْمَئِنَّ رَاكِعًا, in it حَتَّى تَطْمَئِنَّ سَاجِدًا, and the rest. We mentioned ثُمَّ رَكَعْ حَتَّى تَطْمَئِنَّ رَاكِعًا, that you should perform the ruku until you are tranquil in your ruku. And also the same when you are in your sujud. And also when you raise up from the ruku, حَتَّى تَعْتَدِلَ قَائِمًا. In another narration to حَتَّى تَطْمَئِنَّ قَائِمًا. Okay? Yes. So this is required in the prayer. And what is that minimum duration before we say that one has established tranquility in prayer? The minimum duration that will take you to do the adhkar of that ruku is the minimum for the establishment of that tranquility. So once you are in sujud, the minimum period that will take you for the establishment of that tranquility is the minimum period duration for you to say the adhkar of sujud. And also the same applies for ruku and the rest. ويقول فيه سبحان ربي الأعلى, and he should say in his sujood سبحان ربي الأعلى 3 مرات أو أكثر, 3 times or more. Also there are other adhkar like سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده, like سبوح قدوس رب الملائكة والروح, like سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك اللهم اغفر لي سبحان ذي الجبروت والملكوت والكبرياء والعظمة, and a lot of them. So one should actually be switching between all these adhkar. This time you should recite this one, another time this one, another time this one. وَيَسْتَحَبُّ أَن يُكْثِرَ الدُّعَاءَ فِيهِ, and it is recommended that he actually supplicates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his sujood. فَإِنَّهُ مَظِنَّةُ الْإِجَابَةِ, because it is a place that it is you expect more for your supplication to be answered in the sujood. That's what we've mentioned. فَقَمِنٌ أَن يُسْتَجَابَ لَهُ, hadith of Ibn Abbas narrated by Muslim. فَقَمِنٌ أَن يُسْتَجَابَ لَهُ. So you see, one of the places that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts one's supplication very fast is the sujood. Right? There are certain durations, certain places that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it upon himself that if you pray during this time or in this place, of course he is the one who answers prayer, but you should expect the answer to your prayer more. Okay? And this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَرَبُّكَ يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيَخْتَارُ. He's the one that creates everything and chooses from them. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that chooses to make sujood the place that he accepts actually dua more. And he makes certain places too. For example, in his in the sacred mosque, he's the one that chose it, and also he's the one who chose between the adhan and iqama, between the calling of prayer and the iqama. He's the one who chose it. So supplication in the sujood, وَيَجْعَلُ سُجُودَهُ قَرِيبًا مِنْ رُكُوعِهِ فِي الطُّولِ كَمَا تَقَدَّمَ, and the duration of the sujood should be close to that of the ruku, what we have been mentioning. وَيَجُوزُ السُّجُودُ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ, it is permissible to do the sujood on the ground. وَعَلَى حَائِلٍ بَيْنَهَا وَبَيْنَ الْجَبْهَةِ, and also it's permissible to do the sujood upon something between the earth and your forehead. For example, this carpet that is here, min thawbin, from clothes, garments, أو بساط or carpets, أو حصير or mat, أو نحوه or their like. ولا يجوز أن يقرأ القرآن وهو ساجد. It's not allowed for one to read the Quran while in prostration. We've mentioned this. It's not allowed to read the Quran in ruku. It's not allowed to read the Quran in sujood. It's not allowed to read the Quran anywhere in the prayer, if not where it's actually prescribed. So inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will stop here. That's what the narration said. Basically, it's an estimate. You can be repeating all those adhkar in the ruku to make it that way, to make it approximate to the. So you see, if you say you are going to do tarawih or something like that, you are in tarawih, especially tahajjud, right? Tahajjud, you are going, each rak'ah you read 5 pages. Be ready that in ruku too, we'll spend time that's approximately the duration of five pages. Also is good, but ideally, this is the prophet of the prayer of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Ideally, this is how he prays. But though we are very weak, yes. Then we should be reading half page. Yes. Answered? Clear.
Sorry, I'm taking us back. It's about the position when someone comes into the mosque. Let's say the imam has started prayer, the first row is filled. Now, as you coming in and there's no one on the second row, where should you stay? Is he in the center? Is he in the left? Is he in the right? And if there is the correct position for you to stay, will there be consequences for staying on other parts? And if you see people starting from the other side, should you join them or you should move to the correct position?
Okay, standing at any place, any position, provided it's not, you are not skipping any line in between, does not invalidate your prayer. That's what you should know as a start. That whether you stand in the middle, or the right, or the left, it doesn't invalidate your prayer. Except if you skip a line, and then go back to the end of that, your prayer is invalid, because the Prophet said, one who actually isolates himself alone at one part of the masjid to pray, where people are here praying, then he makes his self at one place, he doesn't have. So, provided you are not doing that, it doesn't invalidate your prayer, okay? But what is actually more appropriate is to start the self at the middle, right? Or from the right side. At the middle or from the right side. These two places are more appropriate than starting from the left. These are the things that have been said in the book of fiqh. If you check all of this, they have mentioned them. But you should start from the back of the imam. From the back of the imam, that's, for example, the imam is starting here, then it should be here. It should extend to the right, then to the left. So this is the most appropriate way of starting a new saf. From the middle, extending to the right, then to the left. But when you come to the mosque, for example, you see like 3 or 4 people that have already started the saf from the right, then you shouldn't come to the middle and start your saf. You should go and join them so that the saf will continue that way. That's it.
What if they started on the left?
But it's actually not very recommended to start the saf from the left. Now, the thing is that since it doesn't invalidate the prayer, you can join them. That's the thing.
What of those that, like, if they are in a pool, like the imam wants to raise from the pool and they just come in order not to miss, some will like start from the back and then they start moving onwards.
I'm sure you can answer this question. This question, but I'm sure you can answer, all of us can answer, because the thing is, in the hadith of Abu Hurairah, that was narrated by Bukhari and Muslim, where he mentioned that إذا سمعتم الإقامة فامشوا إلى الصلاة وعليكم السكينة والوقار فما أدركتم فصلوا وما فاتكم فأتموا. That once you heard the Iqamah, meaning the Imam has started praying, you should come to the prayer calm and relax. You shouldn't be running. Then for the person that came to the mosque, he entered and then suddenly, then definitely that person must have run. That's the assumption, right? He must have run. Okay, let's say that's not the case. He hasn't run. He just entered, he walked calmly to the masjid. The moment he entered the mosque, the Imam went for ruku, and then he went for ruku at that place. That place he did the ruku maybe 3 saf apart from the first saf, or 4. Do you understand? This is to show you the distance between that place and that particular place that he started his prayer. So this particular person will enter under the hadith we talked about, the person who isolated himself to pray far away from the Imam. That's the first thing that we should understand. Then the second thing is the fact of walking in the prayer. Let's say he did everything correctly. It also depends whether the takbir that he did it while standing, really. He stood and did the takbir, because most of those people who are talking about, we know how they do that. They just go, Allah. No takbiratul ihram. Without takbiratul ihram, it means what? There is no prayer. You haven't even started the prayer. You just join people without starting the prayer. So that's it. Even if we accept that, okay, let's take that takbir as takbiratul ihram, as some of the opinions in Malikiya, that okay, some of the opinions that have been laxed, okay, fine, it can be accepted as a takbiratul ihram, meaning they chose to, one of their opinions is that they can accept one takbir in place of takbiratul ihram, and then takbir while going for ruku, meaning you can do 2 in 1. Okay, you can do 2 in 1. So even if we take that, what about the fact of moving from that particular place to this place? Does it invalidate one's prayer? No, we've talked about 3 ways now why his prayer can be invalid. So now we are trying to establish the 4th one, which is that movement from the place he did the takbir to the place he intend to join the saf. So actions in prayer, there are certain actions in prayer that are allowed. There are certain things in prayer that are allowed. There are certain things in prayer that are not allowed. To perform an action in prayer is allowed if it is for the purpose of perfecting that prayer. Okay? If it is for the purpose of that prayer. For example, I am praying, and unfortunately I didn't put my phone on silence mode, and they've been calling me. That my attention, I'm not paying attention to the prayer. It's messing up with my khushu. Then for the purpose of my khushu, I want to perfect that prayer, I can put that phone. So you see, this is like something that I can do, okay, 1, 2 movement, fine, I'm done. Okay, it has to be, the work or the action has to be very minimal. That's one. If it is excessive, your prayer is invalid. So taking how many steps it depends on how many steps you have to take. Any excessive action in prayer, it renders it invalid. But small action, for example, 1, 2 actions, because it came also in the hadith of Abu Qatada, where he mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ used to pray with one of his granddaughter, right? The daughter of Zainab. When he wants to perform the sujood, he would keep her. And when he is done with the sujood, he's going for the second rak'ah, he would hold her. So see, that's kind of action in the prayer. These are some of the hadith that we knew that performing some actions in the prayer are permitted, like this particular hadith. Okay? So in essence, what I'm saying is that taking a lot of steps, if it's, for example, a single step to come to the right and then join the proper saf, that would be allowed. But for example, taking steps to the right, forward, it doesn't make any sense. You should come, whatever you meet of the prayer, you should actually join the imam. Even if it's 1 rak'ah, then you should complete your 3 rak'ah. If it is 4 rak'ah, that's what it means. Whatever of the prayer you meet, just accept it, and then you should continue. Instead of this, 4 ways that we listed that your prayer can become invalid. 4 ways. Because you have not entered the prayer, number 1, we mentioned that. Because you must have run, we mentioned that. There is no sekira, there is no waqaf, we mentioned that. Because you have to perform excessive movement in the prayer, we mentioned that. And because you have prayed part of the prayer, away from the imam, alone, you have isolated yourself. These 4 ways. In these 4 ways, your prayer can become invalid.
What about those they are standing at the back of the imam? And then at the extreme end, they are at the front. Maybe the vision of one of the imam just wanted to get.
Yes.
So the person now try to move from the center here to that place. While moving, he has already turned out from the Qibla. So his salah is salah.
Yes, he should start takbiratul ihram and join the imam.
Newly.
Yes. You should do takbiratul ihram and join the imam from that that rak'ah. I think that's, oh my God. I never knew. There's this, I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have. Okay. Here on this paper, there are two questions. Is it okay to make dua in sujood saying, Ya Allah, you said, Ud'uni astajib lakum, I have called upon you. Please respond to my dua, since it is not permissible to recite Quran in the sujood. Meaning, for example, indicating in sujood, I'm going to say, Arab, Anta qulta, Ud'uni astajib lakum, but da'awtu, fa'ajibni. So the saying, Ud'uni astajib lakum, I said it's meaning, okay, it's like a verse from the Quran. And you mentioned, rather, the Prophet ﷺ said, one shouldn't recite the Quran in the sujood. So this cannot be classified under the recitation of the Quran, because this is actually what we call, it's a way of doing tawassul. It's a way of doing tawassul. There are a lot of ways of doing tawassul. So for some of the ways of doing tawassul is to say, God, you said that we should actually supplicate to you. You will answer our supplication. So I have done it. You see, it's like you are setting a background. That's why it becomes so. You said this. Okay, I'm doing this as you have actually instructed us to. But you set a background, and it's a very good thing to do whenever you are supplicating to God. Any small chance that you have to put one background before doing the prayer, put the background, then say your prayer. Okay, God, these people that are trying to do this for us, you know they have done this. And God, you don't like people that do this. God, you know, yes, now you have set the background, then you pray. Okay. God, you don't like al-mufsidin. You don't like this. These people have done fasad upon us. They have done this. God, do this to them. See, you have said, this is the way of doing to us. So it's a good way of, and it cannot be classified as reciting the Quran. The second, do I have to lengthen my ruku' if I am planning to lengthen my sujood for making dua? Since it is recommended to make the duration of the Quran sujood equal, you should start by lengthening your qira'ah first. Lengthening the qira'ah so that the duration becomes sufficient for you when you go for sujood to make your dua. You lengthen the qira'ah, you lengthen the ruku' and also the sujood. Okay. When you stand erect after rising from ruku, do you leave your hands by the side? Yes. If one comes and the imam is already in ruku, does he just do one takbir and go for sujood? No. I'm answering. Okay. Yes, the first question says that after the ruku, after rising up from the ruku, I saying the takbir, do you leave your hands by the side? I said yes. You don't have to take your hands to the chest. The thing we mentioned, after doing the takbiratul ihram. And after doing the takbiratul ihram, you put your hands to the chest. But after rising from the ruku, you do not keep your hands on the chest. We've mentioned this when we talked about that. And the second one is saying, okay, you meet the imam in ruku. You have to do two takbir. You have to do two takbir. The first takbir while standing. While standing, it has to be while standing. Not while you are trying to go for the ruku, so that you meet. While standing, you do takbir. Then you do another takbir and go for the ruku. The first takbir is called takbiratul ihram, and the second takbir you do is to join the imam in his ruku. And the most important one is the first one. What of those dua that are verses in the Quran, can they be repeated in sujood? Yes, I answered this. Is tangim recitation prohibited? Okay, I mentioned the levels of recitation of Tafsir. I mentioned Ta'qiq, Tadbir, and Hadr. Yes, they are the three recognized ones. Even though I said that some people used to put tartil, and I said it's actually not correct because all these things are tartil, all of them are tartil. So there's no point of saying tahqiq tartil, tajweed and hadr. Tahqiq, tajweed and hadr are the levels of the recitation of tartil. So some people used to also add tangim to it, but actually it's most of the scholars of tajweed, al-muhaqqiqun, they have actually refuted that with strong evidence that it's not a recitation that you say this is tartil, doing tangim. We all know tangim, right? That kind of that I will come and I will nearly die. Yes, I will nearly die. And then I will nearly die. Then I will reach the end of the bus. Luckily enough, if I'm still alive, I'll reach the end of the bus. Then people will, some will clap, some will come with money and spray upon you. This is how it's done. So one of the scholars of Tajweed, those that actually said it's not a recognized subclassification of tartil. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What's the ruling on people who stay back distinct while performing ablution and end up missing the whole congregational prayer? Mostly males. Mostly males, right? Okay. Well, you see, the thing is that they have missed a congregational prayer. That's what we assume, the only thing they have done, but they have missed the congregational prayer. That's based on assumption. It may be that they have been disturbing people that have been praying. That's another bad thing. It may be, but let's keep that aside. Okay? Let's assume that only missing congregational prayer was the bad thing they did. Missing congregation. So, if that person who stays back distant comes to pray alone, he has missed a great portion of reward. That the reward of praying in congregation is 20 what times? 27 times, right? The reward of praying alone. So it's a huge reward that you have missed automatically. So imagine if 100 pounds of reward, for example, 100 pounds of reward alone for praying alone. The one who prays in congregation, how many pounds of reward? Can you imagine the gap, the difference? So that's on who? That's on him, right? That's on them. And second thing is that even if they're going to pray in congregation, their prayer is not the same as those that prayed first, right? And because the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of prayers are the ones that are done during the first duration of that prayer. For example, I pray immediately in the first duration of that prayer, and the person who stayed back, gisting, then after 30 minutes, 20 minutes came to pray. You see, my prayer is above his, definitely. So this is it. And the thing that will make them even sing from that are a lot of things. For example, when they are disturbing people that are praying, that's definitely a sin. When they stand back long enough that they miss the time of that prayer, that's definitely a sin. Because they will be termed as those that are playing with their prayers. I prefer to pray Qiyamul Layl alone in the last 10 days of Ramadan because I feel more connected. Is it best for me to pray alone in my room and not join the congregation? So, what do we say about this? It's Qiyamul Layl, for one, that feels more connected when praying it alone. And at the same time, maybe that person wants to have that reward of praying together in congregation. So what do we say about this? Which one should be better? Which one is better? Why? For what reason?
First, from even the level of sincerity.
The level of sincerity.
Halwa with Allah.
Are you speaking, generally speaking, that praying?
For women, like, is it
Okay, yeah, that's something we should also know. Whether the person asking the question is a woman or a man.
it's a woman?
Okay. It's a woman. Okay, fine. If it's a woman, then this is also one of the reasons that will make her prayer at home to be better than to surpass her prayer in the mosque, and also added with the level of connection that she has more when she is praying alone at home. And now this is very simple thing actually. If it's a woman, you should stay back at home and pray. It is better for you to pray at home for these two reasons at least that we have mentioned. Because the main thing is to have that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not that I come out to pray so that people know that I'm praying. No, that's not the goal. Assalamu alaikum. First, what is mufassal? Mufassal means, it comes from the word fassala, from the word fassala, yufassir, tafsila. Fassala means to actually put two things apart, okay? To disjoin two things. Fassala means to disjoin two things. So, mufassal is the term. Mufassal is actually ismul maf'ul from that fassala, meaning the one upon which that action falls on, right? So we can say that kind of the object. So if we want to give that object a name from this verb, we say mufassal. Okay. So it applies to those surah, those chapters in the Quran that are disjoined frequently by basmala, meaning the moment you start, they will end. There will be basmala. You start another one. The moment you start, they will end, and then there will be basmala. So because of that frequent ending and starting of another one, that's why they are called mufassal. As you start kaf, before you know, it will end. Start Dhariyat, before you know, it will end. You start Dur, before you know, it's very difficult. Before you start with Duha, before you know, it will end. You see basmala, and then that's why they are called mufassal, and that's what the word means. Okay, this question we've answered it about where to start the saf from. And also this too, we have also answered it about, for example, verses in the Quran of supplication, that you can use them as supplication to supplicate in the Quran. And the difference is that a verse, you cannot read it with meaning. A verse, you cannot read it with meaning. But when you mean supplication, you can bring it with meaning. You can bring it with what I mean is that a verse, you have to read it exactly the way it is. But when you intend to use it in supplication, you can change the meaning. For example, the way it comes in the Quran is singular, and you want to use it as plural form. So you've already changed it. So it's not a verse of the Quran. It's not a verse of the Quran. Yes. Also, yes. We've also answered this by the side. You keep the hand by the side of Taruhu. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.